The headaches began as mere flickers, sparks dancing behind Liam Spencer's eyes when the stress of deadlines and custody exchanges grew too sharp. But within weeks they detonated into migraines so savage that he could no longer hide the tremor in his hands or the way his vision blurred around the edges of Beth's smile. A battery of tests at University Hospital confirmed his worst unspoken fear. A malignant glioblastoma nestled deep in the right temporal lobe, its tentacles weaving so intimately with vital tissue that even the finest neurosurgeons confessed defeat. Surgery was impossible, radiation merely a delaying tactic, and the most optimistic prognosis granted him months, not years. In the fragile hush of that consultation room, Hope Logan tried to swallow her sobs while Liam watched the oncologist's lips move, every syllable translating into the same brutal mandate: prepare. Preparation, for Liam, meant erasing uncertainty from his daughter's future. He spent sleepless nights drafting spreadsheets of expenses, trusts, contingencies for college, health insurance, emotional milestones he knew he would miss. Yet numbers felt sterile beside the warmth of Beth's bedtime stories, so he sought something equally elemental, a marriage contract that would bind Hope to stability beyond grief. Carter Walton, stalwart friend and Forrester Creations' legal guardian of countless fortunes, possessed the moral steel Liam admired and the financial acumen necessary to shield Beth from family infighting. Hope resisted at first, her heart still tethered to memories of vows spoken under Monte Carlo sun, but Liam's unyielding logic and the dark circles widening beneath his eyes eroded opposition. She agreed, not from passion but from a love fierce enough to sacrifice personal longing for her child's tomorrow. Carter, shocked yet honored, accepted the role, understanding that his signature on a marriage license could anchor Beth's life when the storm hit. In a private ceremony on the Forrester Terrace, with Ridge and Brooke standing uneasy witness, vows were exchanged beneath lanterns trembling in the coastal breeze. Bill Spencer arrived late, rage and heartbreak warring in his gaze as he realized his son had arranged, without paternal counsel, a safeguard that excluded Spencer Publications' dynasty. Bill's protests collapsed against Liam's faltering strength. The groom needed to sit before the ink dried on the certificate. That night Liam rewrote his will with Carter's guidance, appointing Hope primary guardian and executor, naming Steffi alternate in the event of catastrophe, constructing layers of protection so labyrinthine that even the most ambitious opportunist could not pry Beth's inheritance loose. Brooke, sensing the seismic shift, campaigned quietly for influence, arguing that Beth should remain within the Logan orbit, but the documents were airtight. For a fleeting fortnight peace held. Liam's medication softened pain enough for family board game evenings and whispered counsel with Wyatt about corporate succession. Then, without warning, seizure struck. Beth was tracing constellations on her father's arm when his body jolted, teeth shattering, eyes rolling white. At the hospital, monitors screamed a chaos chorus, while doctors admitted the tumor had hemorrhaged, accelerating decline. Steroids and anticonvulsants subdued the immediate threat but unveiled a cruel truth. Cognitive function would now erode in irregular waves until breath itself became a negotiation with the cancer. The Spencer and Logan clans converged at Liam's bedside, each faction carrying love and an agenda. Bill demanded experimental trials overseas. Ridge insisted on sanctuary at the Forrester guest house. Steffi pleaded for shared parental memories to bolster Beth's resilience. Brooke sought amendments granting her advisory power over Hope's financial decisions. Amid the cacophony, Carter became arbiter, his marriage to Hope granting legal authority to interpret Liam's directives. He upheld every clause, blocking Brooke's petitions and negotiating with Bill to channel corporate resources toward palliative innovations rather than risky surgeries Liam had explicitly declined. Hope, exhausted yet resolute, navigated the widening rifts, reading bedtime stories in ICU while deflecting media leaks about Liam's condition. Paparazzi drones hovered near hospital windows, hungry for images of an heir apparent fading. Spencer Publications' stock fluctuated with each unsubstantiated rumor, prompting Wyatt to assume interim leadership under a watchful board. Meanwhile, the tumor's progression manifested in personality fractures. Moments where Liam failed to recognize Beth, flashes of irritability that stabbed Hope's heart, sudden lucidity where he begged Carter to promise that Beth would remember him as more than a cautionary tale about ambition and neglecting wellness checks. Legal battle lines sharpened when an emergency court hearing challenged the guardianship structure. Justin Barber, now independent counsel, represented Brooke and Bill in arguing that Hope's recent marriage compromised her emotional capacity to act solely in Beth's interest, citing grief-induced decision-making and potential conflict should Carter predecease Beth without adequate secondary trusteeship. Carter countered with meticulous documentation. Psychiatric evaluations affirming Hope's stability, fiduciary frameworks naming neutral third-party auditors, letters Liam recorded after diagnosis expressing unequivocal trust in Hope's judgment. Judge Myers ruled in favor of the original will, praising its foresight but mandating quarterly reviews to ensure Beth's welfare. The victory felt hollow when Liam suffered a second hemorrhage that paralyzed his left side and robbed him of coherent speech. Machines breathed for him, and the family war paused in reverent dread. Hope slid the ring Liam had given her years ago onto his inert finger, whispering that love transcended contracts and that Beth would know her father through story, habit, and the way ocean air smelled of courage. Carter stood sentinel, blocking hospital corridors from journalists while quietly drafting an addendum granting Steffi visitation rights unhindered by future legal skirmishes. Wyatt brought Beth to the bedside. She placed a crayon drawing of their family in Liam's limp hand and told him she loved him to the rainbow and back. Electroencephalogram spikes answered where words could not. As July heat blistered Los Angeles, Liam's body surrendered in increments, kidneys faltering, lungs filling, heartbeat flickering under sedatives. Hope authorized comfort care, honoring Liam's advance directive. Bill, tears scalding pride, held his son's feet while recounting childhood fishing trips. Brooke stroked Hope's hair, momentarily silenced by grief. Steffi sang an old lullaby. Carter read the will aloud so Liam could hear its strength sealing Beth's destiny. When the final monitor flatlined, a hush greater than any boardroom silence fell. Funereal logistics unfolded with ruthless efficiency, press statements drafted, memorial venues secured, trust funds activated at midnight. Yet the legal aftershock erupted within 24 hours. Tabloids published excerpts of the will alongside speculation that Carter's new marital status positioned him to siphon Spencer capital. Shareholder panic ignited. Bill's grief curdled into suspicion. Brooke reignited her crusade for maternal supremacy. Steffi considered contesting the alternate guardianship clause. Hope, submerged in mourning, relied on Carter's latticework of protections to hold chaos at bay, but each challenge forced depositions, restraining orders, emergency meetings with forensic accountants. Through it all, Beth asked each night whether heaven has beaches like Malibu and if Daddy could still hear lullabies. Weeks stretched into months of litigation and therapy sessions until one crisp autumn dawn, when the last lawsuit dissolved under judicial gavel, freeing Hope to scatter Liam's ashes from the bluff where he once taught Beth to spot dolphins. Carter clasped her trembling hands as wind carried ash and petition confetti alike into the Pacific, sealing not only Liam's wishes, but the indomitable resilience of a family reforged in the furnace of impending loss. They returned home to a living room glowing with morning light and found Beth building a castle of trust documents and coloring pages, her giggles echoing the promise Liam had fought to secure. A future stable enough for innocence to thrive even under the shadow of an inoperable tumor and the seismic grief it unleashed. Taylor Hayes wakes before dawn on that breathless July 23rd, with a single purpose thrumming through every pulse of her heart. She will seize the future she has spent decades only half claiming, the future she once surrendered to fear, to rivalry, to the immutable gravitational pull that Brooke Logan has always seemed to exert over Ridge Forrester's fickle soul. For too long, Taylor has allowed destiny to be defined by Ridge's hesitations and Brooke's interventions, yet the losses that have scarred her life have forged a sharper edge inside her, and on this sweltering Los Angeles morning she lets that edge gleam. She pictures Ridge asleep in his clifftop house and imagines the sea wind curling round his restless thoughts. She hears again every tender vow he has made since their most recent reunion and recalls just as clearly the subtle tremor of uncertainty she detected in each promise. The almost inaudible echo of past betrayals reverberating beneath his declarations of commitment. Those echoes have kept her awake for weeks, and tonight they have transmuted into resolve. She will not wait for Ridge to write the chapter she wants to inhabit. She will write it herself, engrave it with diamonds, and read it aloud where the whole world, especially Brooke, will have no choice but to listen. In the hush before sunrise, she drives through the empty streets to a private jeweler in West Hollywood who owes her a favor born of old humanitarian work in Paris. Before the city stirs, she holds in her palm a ring designed for declarations that cannot be ignored. Platinum braided with rose gold filaments reminiscent of the first light that filters through her aspen memories, anchoring a solitaire cut so clean that it scatters dawn in shards of scarlet and ice. She slips it into a velvet box and hears the click like the strike of a gavel on the verdict of her own courage. Then she moves through the day as though propelled by tide. At midday, she calls Deacon Sharp and reserves I Giordino's secluded arbor for a private dinner, requesting candles, violins, and a champagne chilled to a precise temperature that matches the color of Ridge's eyes when they reflect a blazing hearth. Deacon, curious but discreet, agrees and promises the kind of atmosphere that hushes gossip and invites legend. Taylor hangs up and summons Ridge with a text that brooks no refusal. Meet me at 7. I have something important to share. Trust me. She does not include a heart emoji. That blatant simplicity is more disarming. Ridge, in the design office, senses the undercurrent and spends the afternoon in distracted sketches that loop back to her smile, trying to decipher the urgency in her words. Meanwhile, across town, Nick Marone steps into I Giordino for a late business lunch and finds himself lingering at the bar, absorbed in the hum of new possibilities. His recent attempts to persuade Brooke that destiny can be redefined, not merely accepted, have left him restless, and when Deacon mentions an exclusive event slated for the evening, Nick's curiosity flares. He orders another espresso, feigning nonchalance, but files the information away with a sailor's instinct for shifting weather. Sunset paints the hills violet as Ridge arrives at the restaurant, nostalgia tangling with anticipation when he sees the table awash in candlelight, Taylor radiant beneath a canopy of wisteria. The violinist's bow dips. Conversations recede. The summer air grows tensile as silk. Taylor stands, fingertips brushing the velvet box concealed beside her wine glass, and begins to speak in a tone as measured as a surgeon's breath before an incision. She recounts loving him through war zones and wedding bells, through the birth of their children and the burial of their innocence, through every scar Brooke ever pressed between them like a stamp of ownership upon his heart. She confesses her own failures, the moments she retreated instead of fought, the years she let fear adopt the name patience. Then her voice steadies on a note of fierce devotion, and she declares that love, like medicine, sometimes demands radical intervention. She opens the box. Candlelight fractures across the diamond, turning tears in Ridge's eyes into prisms. Gasps ripple through nearby tables. Deacon steadies a tray with white-knuckled fascination. Nick, half hidden behind a basil topiary, leans forward until his chair creaks. Taylor asks the question that Ridge never anticipated hearing from her lips. Will he marry her here now, in spirit if not in signed certificate, and wear this ring as testament that no other woman will ever wedge herself between them again? For a heartbeat the universe holds its breath. Ridge's mind ricochets through memories of Brooke's laughter, Taylor's steadfast gentleness, the endless pendulum that has swung him between them, the sons and daughters who have borne the weight of his indecision. He sees Brooke's face when he last promised finality, hears Taylor's sobs the night he faltered, feels the gravity of both futures colliding in this single flame-lit instant. Words fail him. Silence lengthens. The violinist lowers his bow. Taylor's eyes search Ridge's for an answer, reading hesitation as betrayal, hope as delusion, pain as prophecy. She tells herself to remain still, but her pulse thrums louder than the restaurant's murmurs. Nick's phone is already in his hand, fingers hovering over Brooke's contact, knowing that the currency of information loses value by the second. He records every twitch of Ridge's bafflement, every quiver in Taylor's smile, every flinch that confirms the proposal has struck harder than any ultimatum Brooke ever delivered. Ridge attempts to speak, clears his throat, begins again, each fragment of language drowning in the quicksand of too many histories. The ring glitters like absolution and accusation at once. Taylor senses the tremor of refusal before any syllable emerges, and her heart girds itself for shuddering. Yet she swallows panic and reminds him that destiny favors the decisive, that their children deserve closure, that Brooke will seize any crack he leaves. Across the city, Brooke stands on her balcony overlooking Beverly Hills, unaware of the drama blooming in candlelight, but restless with the intuition that something vital is unfurling beyond her sight. She will not remain ignorant for long. Nick's message will soon detonate the calm with revelations sharper than shattered crystal. At I Giordino, Ridge finally exhales a name, Taylor, weighted with an ocean of regret and devotion. He speaks of love too deep for ultimatums, of commitment that cannot be forged by pressure, but by freedom, of wanting to choose her without coercion. Each word, though tender, lands like a hammer on the fragile structure of Taylor's hopes. She hears the plea for patience hidden beneath the poetry, knows patience has been her prison, and feels the walls closing again. Around them, diners pretend not to stare. Deacon rehearses whether to intervene. Nick slips away, mission accomplished. Taylor's spine straightens. She closes the velvet box with the same finality that opened her day. She whispers that promises without proof are phantoms, and that tonight she tried to give their love a body. She rises, kisses Ridge's forehead like a benediction and farewell entwined, and walks out into the starlit heat, leaving behind the scent of gardenias and the echo of what might have been. Ridge watches the door swing shut, his silence now absolute, the diamond's fire guttering in darkness. In the days that follow, gossip surges through Forrester creations like a riptide. Steffi defends her mother with a ferocity born of childhood wounds. Thomas confronts Ridge with anguished accusations. Hope, wary of family fractures, counsels caution. Eric recalls past regrets and warns his son that hesitation is a choice with consequences carved in bone. Brooke receives Nick's account before dawn and feels the old rivalry ignite like dry tinder. She tells herself Ridge belongs to her by design of destiny. Yet a shard of empathy pierces her triumph because she understands the brutality of shattered hope. Still, she readies her defenses, knowing July sweeps favor seismic shifts. Ridge, haunted by Taylor's exit and Brooke's impending reaction, retreats into solitude at the Forrester guest house overlooking the Pacific, sketching gowns that morph into confessions on paper, each line a question mark cannot erase. He replays Taylor's speech, the gleam of the ring, the quiver in her voice when faith collided with fear, and he wonders whether the life he wants is forever trapped in the moment he failed to seize. Meanwhile, Taylor boards a flight to Aspen, seeking altitude thin enough to numb her anguish, vowing she will not weep where memories might see. She clutches the velvet box, now a reliquary of shattered intention, and imagines hurling it into the Rockies, yet something stays her hand, perhaps the residue of belief that miracles can rise even from ashes. Brooke drives to the beach house at sunset, her silhouette framed against a sky bleeding gold into indigo. She finds Ridge staring at the surf, the ring glinting on the table between untouched bourbon and a sketch of a wedding gown that bears no bride. She listens as he unravels his turmoil, then offers comfort laced with anticipation, reminding him that clarity often follows catastrophe. Their conversation stretches into the night, old affinities rekindling beneath the hum of cicadas and the smell of salt. Somewhere above the city, a plane slices moonlit clouds, carrying Taylor further from the life she tried to claim. The ring remains behind, inert yet incandescent, a testament that love without resolve is merely orbit, endless, dazzling, doomed to circle without landing. And as July advances, the bold and the beautiful promises upheaval, Ridge must decide whether the gravity that pulls him toward Brooke is destiny fulfilled or a pattern that devours every promise. Taylor must determine whether to rebuild her heart around independence or gamble again on a man whose compass spins. Brooke must confront the line between victory and compassion, for triumph built on another woman's heartbreak may seed disaster. In the echo of that unanswered proposal, all three lives pivot, the world's breath held for the inevitable collision of love, loyalty, and fate, and when the impact comes it will reverberate through Forrester runways and Logan living rooms, through Aspen Pine and Malibu Tide, etching new constellations of devotion and betrayal across the incandescent sky of Los Angeles drama.